Hi, I'm Bridger Fates with University of Wyoming Extension. The partial budget tool is designed to help ranchers determine whether they're going to be better or worse off financially for implementing a decision. Now, those decisions can be lots of different types of decisions that we make on a ranch. Unfortunately, here in Wyoming, one of those decisions that we have to make often is centered around drought. You know, are we going to be better or worse off if we buy hay or if we sell cows going into drought conditions? Well, the partial budget tool can help us make those sorts of decisions. Let's go to the tool now and take a look and go through an example of how we might make that decision.
So this is what the partial budget looks like. The partial budget asks 4 key questions. And it asks them so that as you're thinking about changes on your operation, if you think about each of these key questions, it'll really help you in your decision-making process. So when you're thinking about a change, the first thing you want to think about is, what additional costs might I incur by making this change? The next question is, what additional income will I receive by making this change? The next question is, what income may be reduced or lost if I make this change? And the last question is, what costs might I reduce or eliminate if I make this change? So that's the 4 simple questions of a partial budget, and it really does help you make better decisions. Whether you use this tool or just ask yourself those 4 questions each time you're making a change on a farm or a ranch, it really does help you make better decisions. In the intro, I said that we would go through a drought example. I think we will go through this drought example. It's an example that sits on the website at all times so that you can take a look at that example. And then I think we'll come back to this example as well, just to give you a couple of examples to see how you might go through a partial budget. So the drought example, this example is a decision that we often have to make when we go into a drought. Do we sell cows or buy hay, or a combination thereof? So in this example, we assume that we're going to sell 160 of 300 cows because we don't have the forage available for them, versus buying hay, right? So I'll go through this example to show you how you might do that. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. One, these videos will live on YouTube for a long time, and prices go up and down. So the prices that I discussed in these examples, although they were accurate at one time, may not be accurate today, and certainly probably won't be accurate tomorrow. But the methodology of how you do this analysis is really the important thing when you're doing a partial budget. So the first thing we have to ask ourselves are, what are the additional costs we're going to face if we decide to buy hay instead of selling those 160 cows? Well, we would have hay at 3.25 ton times 160 head, or 520 ton of hay extra, and we have currently as a price $200. So that's $104,000 in hay that we would need to purchase. And that's really 2 ton for a normal year in this example, plus another 1.5 ton because of drought conditions not allowing us to graze. So that's really the hay we would need to get by with that, to keeping those 160 head. Now, the annual cow costs for 3 years on those 160 head, that would be 3 times 160, or 480 total annual cost per cow. And if we had those in at $650, that's an additional $312,000 to keep those 160 cows. So what's the additional income we would get by keeping those 160 cows? Well, it's selling the calves, right? So if we have 160 calves times a 90% calf crop, and our calves weighing 550 pounds, and we're going to sell 4 years of those calves. That's 316,000 pounds of calves that we're going to sell. And we have them in here at $1.80. So that's another $570,000 in income in this example. So the next question to ask ourselves, well, what's the reduced income if I keep these 160 cows? Well, we could have culled pairs, right? Which is what the other option was. We could have sold those 160 pairs as culls at $1,400. So that's $224,000. And then if we sold those 160 cows and didn't buy back cows for an additional 3 years, we would have hay sales, assuming that the drought was just a 1 year event. So we would have hay that we would have available to sell in the next 3 years at 960 ton. We had it in here at $125 a ton. So 120,000 extra costs there. And then the last question we would ask ourselves, well, what are some costs that would possibly be reduced? Well, if we sold the cows, after 4 years, we want to get back into the market. We want to buy back cows. So we would have to buy bred cows. So if we bought bred cows, 160 head, that's $1,200 or $192,000, right? So by keeping the 160 head, you wouldn't have to expend this cost. But if we sold, we would have to expend this cost of $192,000. So how does this partial budget work? So at the end, we add up the additional costs and reduced income and get a total of $760,000. And over here on this side, we add up the additional income and reduced costs, and we get a total of $762,240. So that gives us a net income or loss of $2,240. So financially, we would be slightly better off to keep the cows and buy the hay in this example. Now, it really depends on current hay price, current market prices, all of those things. But this is the methodology you can use as you're going into a drought to think about whether you're going to be better or worse off financially to buy hay or sell cows. The other thing that the partial budget does on this website is calculate a 10% general error factor or a 5% general error factor. So if we look at the 10%, what we're saying is if I underestimated my cost side over here by 10% and I overestimated my revenue side over here by 10%, well, the worst case scenario would be that we would lose 149,000 in this analysis. If it was vice versa, if I was very conservative and I overestimated my cost by 10% and underestimated my revenue by 10%, the best case scenario, we would make 154,000 after the 3-year period, with the most likely being the number that we calculated at the end here. So that's the way the sensitivity analysis works. Really helps to give you an idea of sort of worst to best case scenario, but also if you have a partner, if you have a bank, this sensitivity analysis really helps them to see the possibilities as they go through. So that's that drought example on the partial budget. I will share one other simpler example here that we just worked up. So this is on a smaller operation where you're maybe going to change to a high twinning ram. So go from 1 lamb per ewe to 1.2 lambs per ewe on your productivity. So if you had 20 ewes, a multi-producing ram, the purchase price of him at $750. Feed for ewes with twins be a little bit more than and feed for ewes without twins, vet and tags where there was 4 additional lambs. We accounted for that. We look at our additional income. That gives us a total of 24 lambs with this higher producing ram. So, a net income of or additional income of $13,440. We looked at our reduced income side. We wouldn't sell the 20 lambs from the lower producing ram. We would sell the 24 lambs from the higher producing ram. And we would save money on the cost of that lower producing ram of $500. So bottom line on this example, we show a net income or loss of about $1,500, $1,478 for just investing in a ram that was going to be a little more productive than the ram that we had been buying. So that's a more simple example. And certainly you can look back down here at the sensitivity analysis too and see sort of worst and best case scenarios. If we're only 5% off, worst case, we would still be making more money, and best case, up there at $2,800. So that's the way the partial budget tool works. And there's a couple of examples. Be sure to watch the other videos on the other calculators for the Wyoming Ranch Tools site. Thank you.